Gonna make the profiles boom, 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 boom. And what is it? I said, what is it? Guard, what is it? I don't know, bitch. What is it? I can't call it like an alcoholic, but one thing I do know for sure, in a menudo style in direct fashion, as you can tell by that thumbnail, it's about my first term. Tracy Prison, D.V.I, Gladiator School, pulling up. The pull up was real, right? I had no choice. They put me there. D.V.I, Tracy. We've heard a lot of stories. A lot of people have been there. A lot of he said, she said, that she said, that he said, right? A lot of stories from a lot of different people, from a lot of different walks of life that have actually went to Tracy Prison. Now, I've been to Tracy Prison 6 different occasions. 6 different times, homie. I've walked that yard of that big yard. And one thing I could tell you is it doesn't change much. They might change buildings. They put certain people in certain buildings at certain times. But what never changes is the attitudes, the get down, and the history. The historia of D.V.I. Tracy Prison. Now, it's shut down. It's gone. No one will ever walk that big yard again. No one will ever be able to say that they've went to Gladiator School from here on out. But one thing I could say for sure is it was an eye-opening experience the first time that I walked onto that yard. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat or add preservatives here when I say I was a little nervous. Having went through the YA system as a juvenile, the youth authority, I thought I was prepared for anything. That in itself was a Gladiator School, especially going down south to Nellis as a Norteño. That prepared me for a lot in life. It prepared me for the fact that I had to become a boy, from a boy, become a man. And I had to do that before I was ready. There were certain situations and certain things that went on where I had to man up. I had to say it with my chest on power. I had to. I was forced. I had no choice. And I thought I stood my ground and held my own pretty good, given the circumstances. No, that's an experience a lot of people will never experience. Having to be basically left in your enemy's backyard to fend for yourself. I had to learn to apply to make weaponry. I had to learn to grasp a mentality of kill or be killed, fight or don't fight. Of course, there was no don't fighting. There was no checking in, no piecing up. There was no running and hiding anywhere. You ran to the fight, not away from it. Now, I did that. And I was able to scale and survive that. So I thought I was prepared for anything. So upon getting booked, getting caught up and being told, hey, you're going to prison, I automatically knew I was going to pull up to Tracy D.V.I. It was like in my future. Not only that, that's all I had ever heard. My tios had went there. I had primos, several family members that have went through and are in the history ingrained in D.V.I. and Tracy, because that's our backyard. Now, being from Merced County, that's where we go. That was our reception. It's just like in the Bay Area. If you get caught up in the Bay Area, you're going to San Quentin. That's in your future. That's what you got coming. Down south, you go to certain places, whether it be Tehachapi or if you're in the Central Valley, more towards Fresno, Wasco. There's these certain receptions that you go to depending upon where your county's at. That's how it is. That's how it's going to be. It's how it always been. So Tracy was ours. The Central Valley, more northern California. We're talking about Stockton, Modesto, Sacramento, Merced. We all hit Tracy, and you're going to see a lot of people from these areas. And one thing about these areas is nobody plays. Okay, from the 209 to the 916, nobody plays. Nobody is going to give an inch and let you take a mile. No one's going to let you, they're going to let you take an inch. You might take 7 inches, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about a flesh, I'm talking about pedazo style. So I'd always heard stories. My tío used to indoctrinate me and give me the rundown on Tracy and tell me war stories about the 80s, about the foundation of the northern structure and things that he went through while incarcerated. So he prepared me for what ultimately was my destiny, which was I was going to pull up one day. And so I remember that first day, and I wanted to speak about it and kind of give you guys the rundown about my first term, my first time ever rolling up to prison, California Department of Corrections. Scary wasn't a word. Scared was not the way to say this, other than a little nervous, a little apprehensive. Apprehensive to the fact that it was now time to shine. It was now time to put up or shut up. It was now time that if I was going to be in the mix at any point in time, this was it. This was where my career started in gangbanging. It didn't start back when I was 11 years old and I committed a heinous crime. It didn't start going up and going through all these battles with the Southsiders in YA, or going through the battles and the wars that we did, the guerra with the Fresno Bulldogs. It didn't start, you know, as a youth thinking I was big and bad and growing a Mongolian and red banyos and all that. That was fine and dandy. That was part of the game. That was part of the indoctrination. That was part of the learning process. But this was the day it was to start. My first day in Tracy prison. So I remember getting picked up. It was about 2 or 3 in the morning. I was in Merced County Jail. I had got basically found guilty. And now I'm going to go serve some time. And I was going to serve some time because I got found guilty for an assault on a dropout gang member. You know, me being active, I pushed a hard line. And now I understand why people say what they say about certain individuals, myself included. But I was pushing that line as well. So I made the next move that was necessary for me to make in the gang realm, and that was to push up on a guy. I got off in the club. He went and told on me. Of course, I went on the run here and there, and eventually, ultimately, I got caught and got snatched up and then got convicted. I actually took a deal on it. I took a 4-year deal. So I was going to go sit down for 4 years, 4 nice ones, 4 hot ones, right? The time wasn't really the issue here. The issue was where I was going to be placed and how it was going to work out for me. Now, I knew my first destination, according to the homeboys that would give me game and run me down, give me knowledge I definitely couldn't get in college, was Tracy, D.V.I. And everything I had ever heard up until this point was how bad of a place it was, how many of the most notorious people or groups were formed there. They just had a deep, rich history when it came to the gang underworld. And a lot of people, the who's who of the who's who, had been there and done that. You know, not everybody, but a lot. It passes color lines and it passes street lines when I say prior to North and South and that ever coming about, everybody went to Tracy. You know, Tracy was a reception and a yard full of killers, full of people that didn't play. They take the names of these places and they say gladiator school, and they were truly gladiators as they went into these yards, and they established their reputations, they established their respect. They established the get down of that prison. So I knew with that deep, rich history, I was going to now become ingrained in it. I was going to be a part of what was going on. Maybe not necessarily, because times change, things get watered down or they get worse. But I definitely was going to walk these same hallways and walk these same corridors and the same buildings that a lot of these legendary figures or people that have been around the block and you've heard their war stories had walked. So I remember pulling up. They picked me up about 2, 3 in the morning. They tell me, roll it up. You're up out of here. County jail. I told all the homeboys, all right, bro, all right. Everybody was still sleeping. They were starting to wake up because it was about to be program time. You know, I was on the active Norteño block at this time, which was 4 block. And I remember me and 2 Africanos that were actually waiting in a cell from general population, because the way it was in Merced County is we had different blocks, and then we had a GP block, which, of course, we were still general population at that time too, but they also... they were a mixture of whites and blacks and others that went to that block. Our block was just strictly Northerners, and then you had the one block, which was for the Southsiders. We didn't have bulldogs in that place. If they did, they kept them in a bubble. Very segregated from everybody just based on the numbers. Not because of their heart or the element of their character, but more so because of the numbers. So anyways, they told me to roll it up. They take me to a room which is in front of the county jail, which is when you first come into booking. They have single cells up there too for high priority cases. They put me into one of these cells with 2 Africano brothers. You know, there were 2 Crips. One of them would become an enemy of mine from Merced Gangster Crips. Another one was from Stockton and had caught his case out there in Merced. He had fell out of Merced County. So we're chopping it up. It's all good. We sat there till about 7 in the morning when they put us in a van and took us to Tracy. Now, I didn't roll up to Tracy like most people do in the Green Goose, okay? The green big old bus that you see on the movies. Not this particular time. This particular time, because Merced County is not too far from Tracy, they drove us in a van. There was 3 of us. We did stop along the way there and pick up a white guy. A wood, sprinkle the woods. There's always a wood. The wood. We want to get locked up too, brother. Okay, well, we got plenty of room for you, right? Guard! Say it with your chest, Wes. Right, so we definitely picked up this wood, long, stringy hair, looked like he hadn't showered in about 6 weeks. He said, what's up, brother? I said, all right, right? And I'm shackled. We're all shackled. Belly chains, nothing new to me. Shackles on the feet, the ankles tighter than hell, biting into my ankle bone. My ankle bone was connected to my knee bone. My pipa bone was connected to my knee bone also. So I felt like my dick was touching my ankle. So, or was it? One never knows, does one. But one thing I do know for sure is they definitely had us in this van. They threw us a sack lunch, told us to eat, but it was a quick drive. So I remember trying to peel this orange on that bus or on that van and hitting a corner and pulling up to Tracy prison. Now, what you see first when you bust that right is it's a big yard. And there's a tower in the middle of that yard. And if you look, it looks like an ugly, depressing yard. I mean, it's yellow grass. It's not green grass. There's nothing but dirt, rocks, a big track. And you can see a wall to your left-hand side. Now, that wall that you see are the actual handball courts. So as we're coming around, you start seeing the blocks. And each block is facing a certain way. And you can see different buildings offshoot. So as you pull in, you go over a few speed bumps, and there's an administrative building. And that was the visiting building where people would come. And I never went there, so I don't know what they had going on there. But it looked like an administration type building. And then you pull up to the front. Now, what we actually did was go around. All the way around, I remember on this particular day. And we went through another fence, a barbed wire fence that opened. And we went to the side, which there was two R&Rs there. There was one that was in the front, which was receiving and release. And there was also another receiving on the side, which was past like a laundry room, it looked like. Now, I remember we went that route. Now, you got to understand, it's my first time in Tracy, so I didn't really know, exactly what was going to go on. I didn't know if it was just, hey, let's get it right from the jump. What I do recall and I remember was that as you pull in, there's a big sign that says D.V.I. Tracy Prison, and there was also a board. It kind of looked like one of those boards at Taco Bell, McDonald's, Carl's Jr., if you go there, right? And it has those slots, which meaning those slats of plastic that say, welcome, goodbye, Jesus loves you, things of that nature. Well, this one said Norteños, Northern Hispanics, lockdown. Southern Hispanics, lockdown. Whites, lockdown. I remember that particularly, that's what it said. And it had a date. Basically, they had been locked down for almost a year. Okay? And that's the way it goes in prison. Sometimes lockdowns are forever. They never end. The never-ending story. Oh, no, right? And I'm pulling up. So I'm pulling up to a lockdown situation. So I needed to stay aware of my surroundings and what particular reasons we were on lockdown for. Now, you have to understand at this time, it was 2005, 2006, I believe. Maybe 4, I don't know, I forget. It's been a long time and I'm old. So anyways, as we're pulling up, I'm looking around me and I see, or no, it was prior to that. I'm pulling up and I see, that was my second term. I see a lot of people in R&R. There's a lot of black guys working in R&R. Okay, Africano brothers. Now, of course, the whites, the Hispanics, what they call them, Northern and Southern Hispanics, are on lockdown. Okay, we're on lockdown, so they're not going to be like that. So what they did was they automatically placed me and the white guy in cages. And the Africano brothers got to go join in this bigger cell with other Africanos that had pulled up from various counties, San Joaquin, Stanislaus, whatever. Today was receiving. Today, battles will be received. And of course, they pulled us out one by one. They made sure that they kept me and this white guy separated. Well, what had happened, right, was the Northerners had got off, and there was actually a body that got flown out of Tracy from a group called the Wolf Pack. There was an ongoing war that was happening, or actually it wasn't the Wolf Pack, that was later on. It was an ongoing war with the whites, which always tend to happen because North and South were kept separated in different buildings, so you never got a chance to see each other. But you actually were mixed in with the whites, and that's where the problems would come in hand. A lot of willing and dealing and business being done and shit that shouldn't have been done. And, we had gotten into it somewhere along the way. Our two prospective groups at that time, we were both activated and functioning. So I remember they called me out to talk to a counselor. They basically asked my age, my number, who I affiliated with. I told them, nope, and guard, hell no, right? You get nothing. I thought you knew it, man. That's not how we do it. I was laced up enough to understand that any questions that you will be used against you in the court of law. And I didn't have nothing to say. Place me where you place me, and then we'll figure it out from there. But there was apprehension there. I was kind of nervous. I was under the assumption that, anyone could take flight at me at any time. A lot of the Africano brothers were looking me up and down. They were giving me these. They knew where I was from. They see me when I took my shirt off. They checked me, butt naked, balls to the wall, and all that. Wiggle the toes, the ear, and the mouth. Don't grab your balls in your mouth because then you're dicked up. For those of you that don't know, refer to the Gangster Handbook. So anyways, they placed me back in the cage and they told me I was going to J-Wing. Okay, J-Wing was a block. It's a building that was an active Norteño block. So at that time. So they took me to J-Wing. I remember getting there and hearing, I tripped because it was like the movies. Up until this point, I had only been in buildings and compas as a youth. As a youngster, I had only been in buildings that were flat buildings, nothing two-story other than when I was in Preston, Cedar was a two-story building. But I'd never really been in a place like this. And I remember walking in and thinking of the movies like American Me and things of that nature, because you see, three tiers, and you see people, at their windows, and it wasn't bars like San Quentin. It was more windows, doors with windows. But it seemed like, okay, you've done it. You done did it now, idiot. You're in prison. And looking around Tracy, I said, this doesn't seem too bad. I remember the apprehension started to fade away. I seen a couple tier tenders. They were down the tier, Africanos again, because we were on lockdown. And there was actually these papers that were placed on each door, which was like a red card indicating north cell, white cell, so that way they wouldn't have any mistakes. They placed me in a cell, and I remember my cellie, he was from Planada. He was from Planet, which is Merced County. And I'm not going to use his name because he's still doing his thing, man, but he was a righteous individual. And he started to indoctrinate me right when I got there, what I needed to do to basically be cleared within this household. So I did that. Politics to the side, which we're not going to speak on. I did everything that was entailed to me to do. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I looked around. When I looked out on that tier, what I seen was hopelessness and desolation. What I seen was prison. Okay, I was finally there. I made it. We did come off lockdown, I'd say about 2 weeks later. And lockdown sucked. They serve us chow in our rooms. Excuse me, I got the burpees. In our cell, we had nothing coming. When I did finally get to go hit that yard, things go on that yard that I don't really want to speak on as far as, politics. But let's just say I was right there in the mix with my peoples and where I should be. It was a very big yard. I remember walking that track or going out to the yard and not really realizing how big it was. It's about 2-3 football fields big. You could be on one side of the yard when you're coming through right out of the corridor. You look to your left, there's the handball courts. To your right is K-Wing, which is the oil. And as you go straight, you'll see bars where you do workouts way in the back of the yard. To your left, like I said, is the handball courts. I don't even remember basketball courts being there because I never really paid attention to those. That wasn't our thing. Our thing was bar work and hurting people. So I walked to this track, man, and with a couple homeboys, you do the buddy system. And we walked as a group. We ended up getting to our side of the bars, our area, and we maintained there. Now, there was never no incidences there on that yard at that point in time because everything was water under the bridge. Whatever had happened to us with the whites or what had went on prior to me getting there was already done. And I didn't speak for the people like that, so it was none of my business. Just go with the flow, Holmes. Period, right? Proceeded to do a few burpees, a few hundred. Proceeded to do some bar work, and that was pretty my interaction. Now being in reception, you don't get much yard time. You don't get much time to be out there in the yard. We're on constant lockdown. I think that was my only time on the yard that stay. We did end up going on lockdown again because there was a removal that happened in a building. So they put us all on lockdown. Norteños at that particular time in Tracy, man, you didn't see much yard. You didn't see much of anything. All you seen was Avalta getting whacked and try to throw them off the tier. That's usually what you see. So that was my experience in Tracy, man. It wasn't a violent one like you would think, but you got to understand there was a main line there at that time that it was an X dorm. Everybody was trying to get there. I think it was level 2 or level 3 at that time. They did have some lifers there that had the juice and were able to stay there. I remember everybody was trying to get to X dorm because it was an active dorm. But at the same time, we just weren't given that love. I ended up going to Jamestown where ultimately I just told a story on it on my other channel today. I had to get off as soon as I got there. But that's just how that was. So, I will say this for people that have went to other prisons. A lot of people like to play that role like, oh man, this ain't nothing. This ain't nothing. There's always apprehension there. You never know. It's not fear of a man. It's fear of the unknown. You don't know, what administration is going to do to you, where they're going to place you, if they're going to place you with the enemies, if they're going to put you in a bad situation. Now, I've been put in bad situations. I've been placed in holding cells with the other guys. I've been placed, in cells with the other guys as a youth. I've been placed in places I was not supposed to be, and I fought my way up out of there, right? Or I did what I had to do. One thing I never did was do this. Watch. Ready? Guard! Never did that, right? Just did what I had to do. But yeah, that was my first day in Tracy. I did hit the chow hall a couple times at that time before we went back on lockdown. And we basically walked with our hands behind our back. You go down a long corridor, get to the chow hall. It'd be your building. You go in, eat, you go right back, grab your sack lunch, go right back to your cells, to your block. A lot of incidents did take place in these corridors. A lot of blood did cry out from the concrete there. I'm sure back in the 80s, 70s, 60s even, there was a lot of murders and a lot of things that did occur there But while I was there, times had changed, man. It was more of a reception. And like I said, they were pretty good about keeping your enemies away from you. So it really wasn't that. But that was my first time in Tracy, man. That's, I just wanted to give you guys the rundown. You guys want to know a little bit more about me, so there's a little bit more. Anyways, with that being said, I hope that you move smooth with a purpose. Yeah, I got to Tracy. I was like, oh, man, I don't want no smoke here, but I'm willing to give him some smoke. And that was that, man. If you like this, hit that like and subscribe. If not, thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears this crown. I'm going to continue to strive and struggle for what I truly believe in. And that's bringing you some of the realest stories on YouTube that I can possibly bring you. None of that far-fetched, added preservatives. I think I can. No, I know I can. I'm going to give you guys what I can. And that I hope that everyone comes together to listen. Thank you guys so much. The gun. Bang, bang. Look at Lavish D in the back. Posted up like that. Cash Money, Lavish D. Hottest gangster in the streets. I rolled around.